In the Newsroom is a production in partnership with Studio Stillwater. Every week, journalists from the Stillwater News Press invite listeners to join us in the newsroom and hear the story behind the stories. Hello and welcome to In the Newsroom. I'm Beau Simmons, editor of the Stillwater News Press. Joining me today, city editor Michelle Charles.
Hello.
Reporter Ashlynd Huffman.
Hello.
And introducing summer intern, slinging Sammy Hutchens.
I like it.
How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing well. I've heard so much about the podcast, so to finally have it materialize in front of my eyes and hear myself with the great radio voice of Beau.
Right.
It's awesome.
Right.
How's it been going? You've been here actually. What was your start week? I'm trying to.
It was 2 weeks after school ended, so boy, I'm so bad with my calendar.
It's coming up. You're coming up almost on the last lap here. You're pretty much. I think you had 7 weeks. You're probably 5 or 6 weeks into it, so not a whole lot of time left. But he just got straight to work, and what did you have a favorite assignment so far?
My favorite assignment, it's probably got to be, and I'm a sports media major. That's kind of where I focus. So anything with a ball or a scoreboard, I'm usually up for. My favorite assignment that jumps off to me, my favorite article I've written, maybe in my career at Oklahoma State or here at the News Press, was an article about the kind of how the fans formed in the outfield of the softball.
That's right.
That was fun, just to meet some people in the community, and I'm a naturally curious person, so when I wonder what's going on, to get to have an excuse to poke around and talk to people and interview them and go up there, that was fun.
You did a deep dive on the outfield fans for the softball, right? The social.
Yeah,
they call themselves.
Yeah, it was great too. I mean, that was one of his early stories, and I was so impressed with it because of the depth he went into and just sort of the way it was structured. I thought it was very, very nicely done. But Sam has been so. He's got such a great attitude, and he's so versatile. I mean, he's willing to do everything. He's done everything from that to doing just your basic sports story, to covering city council when I was on vacation,
right,
to writing what I think is actually an incredibly fascinating story about how you have to be careful about having mosquitoes breeding in your septic tank, which is really disgusting and also fascinating.
Yeah.
And that was the other story that stuck out when Beau asked me that question was, I certainly didn't expect to be writing a story like that and never kind of thought about it, but getting to talk to a professor at Oklahoma State who showed me around his lab and his research area and mosquito eggs and interview him, and then go over to Red Dirt Septic and talk with the general manager there for a little bit. And I would have never thought I'd be talking with those people, but that was a fun story just to, learn as I'm writing pretty much. And I've been all over the board, but man, I've had a great summer. It's been a lot of fun.
Sam, one of the things I love the most about this job is that I basically get paid to learn new things all the time. And I also get paid to I have license to ask people impertinent questions.
Yes.
The things you always wonder about that as an average person you don't necessarily get to ask without getting a raised eyebrow. And I am strangely proud of the fact that I know how our sewer plant works. I've actually had a tour of it. I can picture it when they talk about the tank where they, filter out the solids. I know this is getting really disgusting and detailed, but I mean, there's something about understanding the nuts and bolts about how things work that is deeply compelling and satisfying for me.
Yeah, now we can ask about the difference between chloride and chloramine, or
exactly,
that is.
Exactly, and I can tell you.
Also, I think your first records request, right? Which resulted in looking at athletics finances.
I did not have any idea how to edit a PDF before Beau got behind me and showed me the ropes of, I think it was the Acrobat tool that we used to edit that and send it in. And that's another feather in my cap that it's pretty useful for journalists, I think, is to, like Michelle said, trying to ask some impertinent questions. If you can fill a form to say, hey, you have to tell me.
Exactly.
That works.
I love the form.
Well,
Let me tell you, I
say,
love it.
Well,
I do.
I like we talk about records request, which is his first records request as a journalist, and your fascinated by the PDF.
It's like so much power in your hands, Sam. You be excited about the power you have with the open records.
Yeah, we want to know. We want to know what you found out.
I want to know what's in your emails.
Yeah. What did you learn when you looked at athletic finances in a pandemic period, especially?
Yeah, the biggest thing was, and this almost is need to be accompanied by the waiver of there will be a part 2 because fiscal year 2020, which is not directed from January 1st to December 31st, it's kind of separated in the middle of the year. So the records that I was able to get, and the most recent records, they shed light on the period where Oklahoma State lost some non-revenue sports. If you remember, and obviously all colleges lost the sports when the pandemic was kind of at its early onset, and baseball and softball were the 2 sports that their seasons got canceled halfway. But if you remember, football and men's basketball, the 2 sports that kind of supply the revenue, they had already finished. So that was a bit telling into, how much baseball and softball factor in, and they lost a lot of tickets. And I was surprised at how many tickets that baseball and softball sold at Oklahoma State and the revenue they bring in. But also, it wasn't necessarily a huge hit because with the expenses and stuff, it's pretty much a wash. A little in the red, or a little in the, I guess it is the red, for baseball and softball, but not as much as other sports or across other colleges. They do pretty well at Oklahoma State, but next year I'm kind of readying for getting the request next year to see what happens when they lose football and men's basketball. And obviously the 2 sports played, but it was at limited capacities and they played less games and around limited fans. So that will be where the true decreases start coming in, and we can see kind of how hard Oklahoma State was hit.
So what would you say? So you don't have the 2019 numbers yet, so you really can't look at year over year exactly, right? Okay.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I guess the main summary from this article is Oklahoma State. They actually kind of turned a slight. If you think about it, there's revenue and non-revenue sports, and softball and baseball are both non-revenue. So Oklahoma State actually did slightly better in fiscal year 2020 than fiscal year 2019 because even though they lost some ticket sales and things from the diamond sports, that was negated by the less travel expenses they had, less food they had to give athletes, less equipment. So Oklahoma State did actually slightly better in the midst of a pandemic, but that was before their kind of 2 engines, and football is really the main engine, but before those were hit. So we'll see how well the plane flies with the next records request.
Wow. It's interesting because even in government, we saw that too. With the pandemic, everyone was really concerned about, the impact of the shutdown, but for example, the city of Stillwater took a big revenue hit in terms of sales tax, which provides a lot of its general fund, operating expenses. Took a big hit, for about 2 months. And then everything bounced back, in part because of the panic buying during the pandemic and the fact that people were stocking up on things. And again, expenses were cut because facilities were shut down. And, so it's really kind of weird as we start digging into the effects of the pandemic in different places, what was affected and what wasn't. I would say private businesses were affected much more than our larger institutions.
And a personal anecdote I have to add to that is where I've worked all my previous summers before coming to the Stillwater News Press with an internship has been Blue Source, a little, just a blue collar warehouse down by my hometown in Guthrie. And all they do is ship out paper and pencils and backpacks and things like that for school supplies for the upcoming school year. And that was, we were thinking, man, it might not be a very good year. Schools are be cutting back. It's a lot of charities that give, so charities could be cutting back. But Blue Source shifted to masks, and they actually did quite well because they shifted to masks. So it's interesting to see where some businesses are able to adapt, or where the even sometimes maybe small positives are, and then where really a lot of the true negatives are in the pandemic. It's interesting to see what businesses fared well and not.
I agree.
Have you gotten any feedback other than people saying, "Hey, good job, sport"? Nothing negative or anything of the like. No one's.
For my for this last story on the athletic request records, or as my
no, I just mean in general.
News press as a whole.
I'm curious. I'm just sort of polling you right now.
Yeah. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback, and that's not to say I haven't been immune to negative feedback. I've gotten some, mostly. I don't really have I guess that much reach where I get a ton of angry emails in my inbox every day, which I guess I'll probably get used to down the road a little bit, but I'll get the occasional, questioning or mean-spirited Twitter reply, or you know what, maybe if they see a grammar correction that I had, or, I feel like people always take the opportunity when they can correct someone that writes for a living with a misplaced apostrophe, or
they love
something like that. And I'd probably
lot of opportunities.
yeah, they're all about that. So I'm certainly victim to the occasional that, but I've gotten a lot of positive feedback. Okay. And really the thing that touched me the most is when you write articles for people like the Ron Holt Memorial Tournament that I covered in Guthrie, and Mr. Holt is saying how much the tournament means to the whole community to honor Brad Holt, who was killed by this baseball tournament, and getting feedback from the coach that I wrote my story around, and some of the players, and even the administrative personnel in the Holt family. They all welcomed me back, and they said, we loved your article in the news press, and just to tell stories that might not otherwise be told, but that people can it might just be another link for me or a spot in my portfolio, but for some people I'd like to think that they'll frame that story and treasure it for a long time.
It's a big responsibility too.
Yeah.
Right? So I got to eliminate the grammar corrections because no one wants to have a misplaced word on their wall.
Well, I can tell you that topic of today is feedback. I was sort of thought of this coming in here because I had someone who'd sent a letter to me, wanted me to forward to Chase. And as soon as I told Chase, oh, Chase, I got this letter from a reader, he kind of freaked out a little bit, like, oh, no, what's this? It was actually just someone saying, hey, I noticed you were at this event and you got a photo of us. Can you send us the photo?
Oh, how nice.
And, yeah.
and
it was, and not only that, but yeah, but the rest of it was kind of like, hey, thank you for, covering these things, that you've been going to.
That's awesome.
And it just sort of made me think. So I kind of was curious. And now, like you said, social media, we get instant feedback a lot of times, don't we? But
yes, we do.
Yeah, but usually not much. I think usually people just sort of stay quiet. And Ashlynd, what's your experience, right? It's often people wanting to correct you.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, from the day I started this job to now, I get a lot of feedback from people, but most of it's just like online stuff. Right. I don't usually get emails or letters. I mean, occasionally I'll get an email, but mostly it's just social media. They're like commenting on things, like my stories on our Facebook and stuff.
I've seen some comments that people have had on your stories where they say that's not what happened and you need to get that right. And it's usually when it's based on a police report.
Yeah, and usually if I get an email or we get a Facebook message like that, I just direct them like, hey, this is the police affidavit. This is what they said. If you have an issue, take it up with that officer.
Well, or or that person, if they're a witness, could be a source to you.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true. But usually it's people that have been charged with a crime are the ones that are, And I do, people will come in here and try to say that, something happened that shouldn't have happened. And I do look into those. But, it doesn't always check out.
Yeah. It's hard sometimes. I know when we had this story on Pride in the Park, I went in and I hid some comments on our Facebook feed because there was one particular person who is kind of a habitual troll in community groups, and they started saying some things that I thought was a little unkind.
Well, you can have contradicting opinions, but you can't be abusive.
And I think that's where
foul language. Yeah,
that's where we draw the line, right? It's like really bad profanity. And also just abusiveness.
We don't really go in and delete comments that have bad words. Usually Facebook does it itself, right?
I will usually go in and actually look at it to see how bad it actually is.
Oh, yeah, I do the dumb, like, man, why was this hidden?
Yeah, because sometimes it'll just say, like, damn, and Facebook will automatically hide it. So I might unhide one of those. But if it's something where they drop an F-bomb or they, abuse someone, then I'm going to go ahead and leave it hidden. Or if it's something that I think is just exceptionally mean-spirited and, to be honest, super crappy and doesn't add to the conversation, then I might go ahead and hide it.
Yeah.
But if it adds to the conversation, I might leave it, even if it's a little unpleasant. Because there's some value in having those discussions, too.
Right, so no one has been especially mean to you yet, Sam, which is great.
You're still
precious and
He's so innocent.
You haven't, yeah.
There's so much light in his eyes.
The disclaimer I'd say is I haven't really written any scathing articles or, I like to say, I've told Ashlynd before, I write about sometimes people's best moments, their perfect game that they threw. Like I covered a softball perfect game earlier, or, the making it to the College World Series. And Ashlynd covers their worst moments where they're arrested or, pulled over, or they're in court. So I can understand maybe the comments I get are, come over to the tailgate and we'll get you a hot dog and stuff. And everyone wants to meet you who wrote the story.
Can we trade beats just for a minute?
So I did that. I went over and I had a couple copies and wanted to thank everyone that was out there. And they were like, oh man, and they loved me. And Ashlynd, you're writing about their worst moments. So, occasionally our beats can intersect a little bit, and sports heroes or sports villains, they're certainly within the parameters of getting arrested here and there. But for the most part, I think we write about people on different ends of the spectrum.
That's a really good point. I can see why you like what you do, because it sounds like a lot of fun.
Honestly, I like what I cover too, though. So not everything. Some things are really hard, like when that 2-year-old got ran over last week. Like that was really hard. I showed up on scene before anything had even been taped off or before anything was known. And so finding out that the little kid actually passed away, that was really hard. And, a lot of people on social media had a hard time with it too.
That's a tough one for the whole community. I mean, you've got a little niece who's about that age, right?
Yeah, she's that exact age. Yeah, and I just kept thinking about, because when I showed up on scene, there were things I wish I hadn't seen, but I just kept thinking about my little niece. And, I'm not the only one that's like that. Everyone has kids or has someone around that age that they know and that they love. And so it's just stories like that are particularly difficult. But it's my job, so.
Yeah, that's tough. That is tough.
Yeah, and I think I don't really know how to transition away to that, but I'll come back to the original point that I was trying to make, is that, we don't get a lot of criticism like you would expect. I mean, we get it every day, but like someone who really makes sort of this salient point, pointed argument for why an article was wrong. We don't, and I kind of almost wish we had that more. You know what I mean? It's like I actually want people to point out if something is flawed. I think I sort of feel almost the opposite of what people might expect, is like I want to know when a mistake happens. I think a lot of people just assume they don't want to be a Karen or whatever, right? Yeah. They don't want to be the person who complains. We've turned complaining into a bad thing, but a lot of times I kind of want that criticism so we can correct
it helps
the
us
mistakes.
Grow and
sure.
get better.
And I think that there's a difference between making a comment that is abusive and making a comment that is constructive, or just pointing out an error. I think there's also, someone who can say that a story's wrong just because they don't agree with it or they don't like the topic, and someone who actually has a fact that would add to the narrative that actually makes it a more complete story. Maybe there's another side of it that we need to hear that we have not heard yet. And, occasionally we will get people who respond to our stories who can become sources and who can provide a different perspective. It doesn't happen as much as you would think and as maybe would be helpful. But, but we don't really, we're not that thin-skinned. We take a lot, and we want to do the right thing. We want to report correct information.
It's funny.
We want to be better.
Not only that, but it's partly my ego too, because I write a lot of editorials when I think, I've just destroyed whatever that is. You know what I mean?
And nobody responds.
Like no response.
It hurts, doesn't it?
I think I've been like, oh man, look at this just verbal wizardry, like I'm just, cutting someone to pieces like Zorro, and no, nothing. And then we'll get these letter writers fighting back and forth for weeks. They'll go on like week-long feuds with each other, and still no one responds to an editorial I've written.
It is kind of hurtful, isn't it? Yes, I know. And, it's kind of weird because we have stories, too, that go out where we think either this is going to be really controversial or this is really going to push a button. Like, people are going to be shocked by this. People are really going to respond to this. And then it just kind of goes out into the void, and our reading public doesn't really give us a discernible reaction. Now, It doesn't mean they're not reacting in private. It doesn't mean they're not thinking about it, but we don't hear about it. And it is a little disappointing sometimes. I mean, even whether it's an attaboy or whether it's hey, you got this part wrong, or by the way, I also know something about this. I mean, we would welcome any of that. And a lot of times we don't get that. And you do feel a little sad. You're like, did anyone even read it?
That's how I feel. Yeah, sometimes, I'm like, man, this didn't get any reactions on Facebook. What is going on?
We have different audiences too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was going to say something about Michelle mentioned like reaching out if you are on an opposing side. That kind of happened with my drug story that I did. Someone from Narcotics Anonymous actually reached out to me and was like, hey, I loved your drug story, but there's this organization too that you need to include into your drug stories. And so that was one of those things where it's like, okay, he's from another side. He has a story to tell, and it would benefit the public to know about it. So I was going to say, if anybody has ideas, send it to us.
You're talking about
yeah.
Exactly.
Yes,
that's what we're saying, guys.
Yeah.
And, anything could be a story. You might think, oh, this won't make a good story. Just call us. Let us know.
Well, that's a good, and someone made a really great point to you, too, because there are a lot of different kinds of recovery programs, different kinds of addiction programs, and some of them might be like for one specific religious kind of faith-based thing that may not work for someone else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I didn't even know, like, they went into the Payne County jails and they did all kinds of stuff and to help inmates and to help the community, and I didn't know any of that before he had reached out to me. So that's why we have emails on our bylines.
Yeah. Well, and I listened to the last podcast that you guys did when I was on vacation. And I remembered you talked about that panel that we were on at the Oklahoma Press Association.
Yes.
And using social media. That was a big part of it, a big part of the discussion. A lot of it was centered around breaking news. But also, we talked a little bit about how we use it for news gathering. And a lot of times, you'll see something pop up, a comment or something pop up in like a community group or, someone's feed that you follow. And, it gives you an idea, at least to follow up on that. So we get story ideas from that. And then also it's a great place to find people who are concerned about these issues and people who have different perspectives on them. Sometimes we will reach out to those people and we will ask them questions or ask if they would be willing to interview with us. Right. So I don't know. I mean,
that's another good point. Some of the, like you said, I think you guys are kind of making a point here that it is a responsibility for us to be visible,
right?
To want the feedback, to request the feedback, and especially because that came up a lot in the panel too. I think not directly, but a point you're making, like we have Chase who's really great at TikTok.
Yes,
we have some colleagues who are really great at Twitter. Michelle's on the radio, a few times a week, so. She has that visibility. So, Sam, no pressure, but you got to really raise your profile. Yeah,
we're planning a magazine for the Chase and I to hand out to the participants of Lights on Stillwater, and I'm beginning to see the writing on the wall a little bit of now I don't understand where people like my grandparents' age might be like, man, I don't understand anything about Twitter, or I don't understand anything about smartphones or things like that, and I've always thought, wow, like that's pretty hard to do nowadays, but I'm beginning to see the writing on the wall of even things that are, I'm 19 and a half now, and seeing things that are like it coming out,
child.
Like now I think I'm finally able to reach the point where things might be coming out that, are built for people younger than me, and I'm just not getting on board.
Right.
I think I'm seeing the writing on the wall of I might be that person one day.
It constantly changes.
Yeah.
I might be that person one day that has no idea what's going on
20 years
in
ago,
technological apps or whatever's out there when I'm 70.
20 years ago, none of this existed. Or, people didn't have personal profiles, and there wasn't, we had chat rooms. We had people we had people who would go
AOL
on your
chat rooms.
Yeah, we had people who would go on your website and comment. They would log in and they would comment there, and people would fight in the comments.
Right.
But you didn't raise your own profile unless you were also on the radio or you were a columnist that people read all the time somewhere. So,
well, sort of the idea that you as an individual journalist need to develop your brand.
Yeah.
That you need to have a brand and that you need to tend to it and develop it and have this public persona. I mean, I never thought of that when I started doing this even. That never occurred to me. I'm like, I'm just going to go to things. I'm going to write down what happened and I'm going to send it into the newspaper, and that's how it's going to be. And so things have really changed even, in the last, I've been doing this about 16, 17 years now.
Yeah. And so we've gone from Twitter to Instagram to TikTok, and now I don't even know. You're right, Sam. We don't know what the next thing is going to be 3 years from now. We could have to learn a whole new thing. We don't,
Right. And there's going to be a bunch of teenagers making fun of you for being out of touch.
Right. 100%.
Look at this old guy on Twitter.
Right.
this dinosaur. Yeah.
Yeah, I downloaded Twitter for when I got to Oklahoma State. I'm like, you know what? I'm writing for the paper now. They encouraged me, download Twitter. That's a good way to Twitter your articles, because I know a lot of what I read is online. So, you just got to tend to your audience and do a Twitter profile. And it's, even my little Twitter account for an intern and just a student journalist now, to develop my brand a little bit. And, people might, DM me with questions about sports that I've covered. And that's honestly pretty cool and so rewarding, I think, is to be a little bit of, at least to someone, you are the guy to ask if, hey, why is this person not in the roster? Or, does coach just not, have confidence in this formation anymore, or things like that? I think that's pretty cool.
That is cool.
It's a nice sentiment. To someone, you are the guy.
Yeah.
Adding that to my bio now. I am the guy.
I think that's something we should all remember. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are. To somebody, you're the guy.
Yeah. You're going
Absolutely.
Be
Those are words to live by.
Version of an expert, sure.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to make my podcast debut and drop some wisdom, but
you did. I'm going to carry that with me.
We coin a lot of phrases around here. Anybody want to mention what they're got coming up, working on?
Well, something I'm working on for the weekend is I'm working on a story about Chad Sullins. He is a local Red Dirt musician who died this past weekend. And a lot of his friends are memorializing him. They're going to have a Chad Sullins memorial. I don't know what it's going to be. Probably some kind of a jam out at the Tumbleweed at the end of the month. But he was a guy who was well known as a singer-songwriter. Played a lot around here, all over the state, and he'd had some health problems recently, but no one was expecting him to go when he did.
Well, he had. I think I saw it. He had like a string of shows in Payne County.
Yes.
Just not long before he passed, right?
He played Friday night at the Salty Bronc.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and then Sunday he died. He was a past recipient of the assistance from the Red Dirt Relief Fund because he had open heart surgery last winter.
Yeah,
so,
a lot of these musicians don't have health insurance.
They don't.
Yeah.
They don't. And the really cool thing, one of the cool things that will be included in the story is that his friends got together and they did sort of a fundraiser. Chad had already scheduled a bunch of gigs for several months after he had his open heart surgery, and he wasn't going to be able to play them. And that's lost income, right? That was his only source of income. He was a working musician. That was all he did. He didn't do anything else to earn money. And so his friends organized an effort where various musicians, like they called these venue owners and said, hey, Chad can't make it, but we're going to provide you with another performer if you will let them perform. And these people played his shows for free and then gave him the money from the gig and all the tips and everything.
Wow.
And they did that for about 2.5 to 3 months worth of gigs. So there was a lot of support for him in the local music community.
That'll be nice. That'll sort of look forward to that. I know it'll be sort of a tearjerker as well, but
I love a tearjerker. Yeah. I mean, but no, it's just, oh my gosh, people are really, we've lost a lot of really talented musicians over the last few years. So I think that that community, the Red Dirt community, is really feeling those losses because it seems like almost every year they lose someone now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway.
I can't think of a year we haven't had one of the originals, one of these.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? Anyone else?
After we get done with this, I'll be working on a 4th of July kind of preview / wrap up a little bit, detailing what's going on. I've always held that it's probably my second favorite holiday, or third, behind Thanksgiving and Christmas. I definitely have 4th of July. It's one of my favorites, and it's always fun to see. In Oklahoma, especially with, I know a lot of people that might be have not had their parties last year, they'll save the money and go extra hard this year. So I'll be excited to write about that.
What was your normal 4th thing? Where did you usually go on the 4th?
Well,
growing up,
there's kind of two spots. What we would do is for whenever I was probably about 10 to 16, we would go up to Kansas, and I say we, myself, my 2 brothers, and my parents, and we'd go, our cousins and our uncles and aunts, they would throw a big homemade 4th of July show where everyone buys fireworks and brings it up, and then they had some kind of I know regulations came in, and neighbors got concerned that the mortars going off. They have a huge leafy trees in their neighborhood, and doing it on the street, and kind of the ender to that a little bit was when one of the fireworks tipped over on us and shot actually right at the crowd. So that was a little bush league, maybe a little bit. But
we've all been there.
It sounds like you went a little too hard, Sam.
It was it was certainly a great memory we have of doing some things that probably not super smart, but you know what, we had a great time, and I have all my fingers now. But now our neighbor, Mr. Rosario, he's been known to go hard on the fireworks. So last year, our Mr. Rosario story is he it's always kind of him and another neighbor down the street that we have the firework wars, and we always try to see who wins every year. And we think Mr. Rosario won last year because he brought a trailer, and he has a bunch of friends come up and they all buy fireworks, and he brought a trailer to light them all off. And then we were wondering what Mr. Rosario was doing at about 10 o'clock when he left with the trailer, and he came back with another load of fireworks to shoot off because he put an exclamation point on that year. So lately we've just been inviting some friends over and watching Mr. Rosario shoot them off and kind of hanging out in our cul-de-sac.
That sounds like all you need to do.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I think for a while though, the sustained drought really had kind of changed our fireworks culture, hadn't it?
Yeah,
because we'd gone a few years,
about
a decade ago without the big shows or people really getting to do much.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it did put a damper on things. I mean, you've always have people. When I lived out southeast of town, you would have people go out on the county roads and set them off. There was like a certain bridge that was over near us, and people would go out there and shoot off fireworks on the bridge all the time. People who lived in town and couldn't do it without getting in trouble.
And now apparently fireworks are more expensive because there are supply issues.
Oh, probably like everything else, right?
Raise the prices. I don't know why. Okay,
some people don't care though. My nephew would he would drop big bucks at the fireworks stand every year. And yeah, all the kids and all the nephews would go out and just set off as many of and they would really try to do like a show. Like they would try to sequence them and everything.
Yeah, cool.
But I actually ran across a Facebook post I made a couple years ago of my nephew's son. They took a bunch of what was it? They took a bunch of bottle rockets. They had a bunch of bottle rockets, I think. And they stuck them, sparklers. It wasn't, anyway. And they stuck them in a brick and they lit them all at once. And it made like this huge fireball. You think of sparklers as just being these kind of safe little things that little kids run around with. They made them dangerous. So it made like this big fireball. And anyway, I saw it and I was like, what were you doing? And I asked him, he told me, I said, that sounds kind of dangerous. He's like, I know, we're going to do more now. They did twice as many the next time. That's just, what? People like to blow things up. I don't know. We're in Oklahoma.
You got to figure out where the line is. You got to walk right up to it.
I guess so. My family likes that. They flirt with the line.
Yeah. All right. I think that's going to do it for us. So happy 4th I don't know. That already happened. Independence Day. All right. Thank you for joining us in the newsroom. Thank you for joining us in the newsroom. Look for Studio Stillwater wherever you find your podcasts. Find archived episodes on stwnewspress.com.